There. All right. Ready?
Yep.
Well, welcome back to the South Concourse of the McLean Stadium Plaza in front of the RG3 statue, who we got to see in the press box last week, John.
Did you get to talk to him?
I did.
He was kind of entertaining the troops, wasn't he?
He was, and he was very open and transparent. Like, I'm the new guy on the block at ESPN, so they kind of steer into that. His first time at BYU, and then Mark Jones I've been here hundreds of times.
Yeah. That was fun. That's fun having Rob on the game, and I think he does a good job of not being pro Baylor, because people are watching for that.
Yeah,
if they
exactly.
know he's doing the game. So I think he does a really professional job.
And it's part of the reason people didn't like watching Kirk Herbstreit call Clemson games when his kids were playing at Clemson, is they thought he was pro Clemson or pro Ohio State, and so
people can read into it pretty much anything they
Exactly.
want anyway. I'm pro Baylor, I admit that.
I'm Kurtis Quillin alongside the voice of the Bears, John Morris, and welcome into Week 3's Big 12 breakdown here on your 6 new streaming platforms. And John, let's start with Baylor BYU. That was a late night. Did you ever go to sleep?
Oh, was it ever a late night? Kurtis, I'm getting too old for this. But it was fine. It was a long day, but the weather, as you know, was just beautiful out there.
Amazing.
So I took a couple of really long walks around Provo, went to campus and walked around, and just kind of got acclimated to that area, because we'll be making regular trips there now when BYU's in the Big 12 Conference. But late kickoff, and then, of course, you're going to have an overtime game when you kick off that late. But I think we made it fine, and I laid my head on my pillow at 6:38 Sunday morning.
Woo!
So I'm feeling good now.
I thought it was late when I got to bed about 4 o'clock Mountain Time on Sunday morning is what it felt like. Because, you get back to the hotel and you got to decompress a little bit. You can't just go straight to bed.
Right. I'm not complaining. It was a great trip. Wish Baylor
fun.
had won. And pretty good learning experience, I think, don't you?
It was. I think so. And if you're going to trip up on the road, BYU's the place to do it this year, because BYU has the potential to be this year's Cincinnati as far as skill level goes. The fact that their 2 top receivers are out of the game and they can turn to Chase Roberts, who, let's be honest, on a normal week would probably be their number 3 option, and he becomes their number 1, and he goes off and has some beautiful catches for the Cougars. I think that's as good of a quality loss as you can take for whatever that term means.
I agree. Yeah, and they were ready for Baylor. We talked about it last week. I mean, this is a big game for Baylor and for BYU, but a big game for them being at home. Their fans were great, really friendly. Their student turnout was unbelievable, and it was just like I said, a learning experience. Tough loss for Baylor, but I think one that Baylor can learn from and overcome.
To illustrate how friendly this fan base was and how friendly some of these people at BYU are.
I got some stories too.
Oh yeah, I want to tell one that I talked to David Kay, who works in the sports information office at Baylor. He and I talked about it at halftime, and on the rules that we got for shooting the game, it said don't stand in front of the play clock. I've never shot in a college stadium that had NFL-style play clocks where they're down at field level, so I'm not thinking anything of it. So I go into the end zone on the north side of the stadium, and I'm shooting in there, and this college kid, paid security, walks up to me and has his hand on me and goes, Sir, can you scoot over? You're blocking the play clock.
Very nicely.
And extremely politely, and the ROTC manning the cannon in the northeast corner, the northeast corner of the end stadium. Hey guys, when that, like, at 25 seconds on the game clock, hey guys, when that clock gets to 0, we're gonna shoot this thing off if they don't score before that. And we have, you too have covered some games in some stadiums where they don't care.
No.
They're gonna come up, they're gonna yank you off of where you're not supposed to be. They're gonna just, hey, there's a cannon, do whatever you want, but we're gonna shoot it whenever we want. And so it was so refreshing to see just such a polite university.
And they were, even in storming the field after the game, they were now I wasn't down there, but I heard from some people that were there, it's almost like a respectful storming of the field, if you will. You know what I mean? Which isn't always the case, I just think they're a really good fan base. And how about this? I didn't learn this till Monday or Tuesday. Nick Florence told me that the Baylor section, that one sliver that wasn't blue and white, the Baylor section, they brought ice cream and gave ice cream to every visiting fan in that Baylor section.
That's cool.
Now, where else in the world is that going to happen?
What other band is going to play the visiting team's fight song before the game? So, and very unique experience in Provo last weekend. Let's talk about the game. Tay McWilliams, Monterey Baldwin. It seems like whenever those two got hurt, because I remember seeing Tay McWilliams take a monster hit in the second quarter, and he didn't play the rest of the game. I don't remember Monterey Baldwin's, but I do know that Matt Lively, who's our weekend anchor, was watching back here. He texted me, Monterey hasn't taken a snap in the second half. It seemed like the passing game kind of got a little conservative there, whether that's receivers didn't have confidence in the routes or some sort of miscommunication between Shapen and the receivers, but they really did have to turn to the run game.
Yeah, very much so, and Monterey is such a deep threat. He's the guy that you're going to take a shot with, throwing deep down the field, and he was not available, and Tay was not available. I think losing those two really pretty early in the game, right? It was certainly the first half.
Yeah.
When both those guys went out, I think it had to change their way of thinking, and then Baylor really tried to pound it, and it worked with some success, but not great success. 52 carries, I think, and not much yards per carry. But the thing that I noticed that we missed were the explosive plays. I think our longest run was 13 yards.
Yeah.
Our longest pass was 19 yards. We didn't have a single play. Baylor, didn't have a single play over 20 yards on Saturday. And that hurts. I mean, I think with Blake Shapen back there at quarterback, you're going into a game expecting to have more explosive plays.
You really do, and you have to think that's part of the reason they made that switch at quarterback,
Sure.
and then
Yeah.
they wound up going back to essentially what was the 2021 offense, just
point.
minus Abram Smith and Treston Ebner. Now, Squirrel Williams does a nice job. Quillin Jones might have kind of put his stamp on being that number one back for the Bears moving forward, because he was as good as possible against potentially the most physical defense they're going to play all year.
Yeah, and give BYU credit. I mean, their defense was really good. They were not nearly. This game wasn't nearly like the one here last year.
Right.
Where Baylor dominated both sides of both lines. It wasn't like that at all.
Jaron Hall showed why he is such a high-level NFL prospect in this game, but the Baylor defense looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to double overtime, you only allow 26 points. I mean, how many defensive coordinators would kill to have that kind
on
of
the road?
Yeah. So the run game was contained fairly well, but BYU's run game presence isn't really there. We talked about Tyler Algier being with the Falcons now. They probably wish they had defended the pass a little bit better, but I don't think anyone saw Chase Roberts coming onto the scene like he did in that game. So moving on to Texas State now, as we always start with here on the Big 12 breakdown. Baylor, 11 a.m. kick Saturday against the Bobcats. 3 main keys to a Baylor victory Saturday.
In my mind, and what do I know? But in my mind, the first one is I think Baylor is still trying to develop their identity.
Yeah.
I think I know what they want to be, what they want to do, but I'm not sure they've been able to do it in the first 2 games. What is that? A run-first team, that plays solid defense. Defense was there. Running game, I think you can get more from that, and I think they hope to get more from that. But I think they're still trying to develop and show on the field their identity.
Yeah, okay. I like that. My main key, I'm going to go with the windshield. I had a high school coach one time that told me after a loss is that the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror for a reason.
That's good.
And, I mean, you don't know if the guy who started the season as your starting running back is going to be playing in this game. You don't know if the guy who started the season as your biggest deep threat is going to play in this game. You don't know what the offense is going to look like because of those 2 key pieces missing. At field level, it looked like Squirrel Williams, who is coming off of a couple of knee injuries, was a little timid on making some cuts on Saturday. We actually, to the point where last night, talking to the players, we talked to Craig Squirrel Williams, and that was addressed. Like, are you feeling okay? Are you feeling back to 100% on your knee? He says yes. And so I want to see Baylor just kind of completely forget about that BYU game and focus on Texas State and then Iowa State.
That's really good, and because you always hear the old thing, you don't want one loss to beat you twice.
Exactly.
You don't want to dwell on that loss so much. It was interesting, wasn't it, Monday's press conference with Coach Aranda, what was it, 25 minutes or so, and we spent 24 minutes talking about the BYU game,
right,
and very little talking about Texas State. But that was the media asking him questions. I think they turned the page pretty quick. Look at the tape, learn from it, but then move on to Texas State. Second one for me would be, remember Dylan Doyle went out in the second half with a targeting call, and he's the least likely guy to to be called for targeting. Not that he doesn't play hard, he plays very hard, but he is just such a good, clean, fundamental player. Right. He would never do that. But it was a case where I guess a receiver kind of jumped in the air, and
defenseless receiver, and just
unfortunate
timing.
helmet-to-helmet contact.
Yeah.
Right. But it was targeting. By the letter of the law, it was targeting. So he was ejected. Also means he cannot play the first half of this game against Texas State. And to me, that's a big loss to have him
Huge
not
loss.
be able to play even for a half, because he's such a leader, he's such a vocal leader, and somebody on that team or on that defense is going to have to step up and fill that void for the first half.
Yeah, I'm gonna go defense on my second one too. That Doyle loss is huge.
Yeah.
For me, some of those quarterback hurries that the Bears got on Jaron Hall have to turn into sacks this Saturday.
That's good.
Because they had a lot of pressure on Jaron Hall. I think everybody can admit that, because the defense did play remarkably well. But some of those quarterback hurries have to become sacks on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, so number 3 for me
Yes.
would be got to take some shots. Got to throw the ball long. You know, even we don't know about Monterey Baldwin. We don't know if he's going to be available to play this week. But there's some other guys that have pretty good speed out there at the receiver spot. I think you got to take some shots downfield, and maybe that loosens things up in the line. You know, BYU got to where they were packing that box for the most part, most of the second half, and sure were in overtime also. But if you take some shots, maybe that opens it up. And by shots, I just mean throwing it deep ball downfield a little bit.
20-yard pass attempts.
Yeah, something like that. So I'd like to see that. I know Blake Shapen is capable of doing that, more than capable. And I think we've got the receivers that are capable of that too.
I kind of, along those lines, did you think that first play from scrimmage last week was kind of a feel-out play? Because that was the only real kind of shot play I saw them take on Saturday.
Yeah, that's true. I'm not sure they did it. Hardly any, if any, after that.
My third and final key is going to be Quillin Jones.
Yeah.
We don't know Tay McWilliams' status. There is a chance that if he does play, that it's limited in a role. And so Quillin Jones has to do what he did against BYU against this one. He has to be the aggressor on the physicality side, and then he has to find holes and get through them. He's shifty enough to do it. He's a good enough running back to do it. And I think whether it's him or Tay that starts this game Saturday, I think Baylor has a shot at doing it. And so I think that would be the key. If I was going to give a fourth one, it would be you have to overmatch a team you're supposed to overmatch.
Yeah, good point. Take 4. Go ahead, take 4. And back home, that's good.
Yeah.
It's family weekend on the Baylor campus. Should be a great atmosphere here. They got a lot of activities going on. And then the football game, get up early and get out here, and everybody's got to be ready to go early. 11 a.m. kick.
Those 11 a.m. games somehow are almost as fun as the night games.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
Everybody just wakes up, goes to the game.
Yeah. You know what, it used to be, if you got stuck with an 11 a.m. kickoff, it was not a good matchup, you know, for TV or anything. But now that's kind of a prime window. You know, the Fox Big Noon kickoff, it's 11 a.m. is noon Eastern time.
Yeah.
That's a very prime piece of real estate. You know,
That's
in
their
the
marquee
television
game.
world. Yeah. So 11 a.m. is, you know, not the dog that it used to be, and certainly this isn't. In fact, we'll play at 11 a.m. against Iowa State next Saturday at the Names.
Do you think it helps going to Ames having that 11 a.m. kick this week?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe so. You do it 2 weeks in a row.
It's a very different routine.
Yeah, you kind of get up and get going, the complete opposite of what it was last Saturday.
Exactly. Let's do a quick run through week 2 in the Big 12 Conference. I keep my notes on my phone. Is Texas back? They almost did it, John. The Longhorns, 19, number 1 Alabama, 20. Good enough performance from Texas that after a loss, they're into the AP top 25, and I would have put them there after that performance as well. And Alabama drops a spot from number 1 to number 2 after that one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would put them in the top 25. I mean, that was a great effort, especially defensively by Texas. I mean, they were toe-to-toe, if not maybe a smidge better than Alabama defensively on Saturday. And just, you know, late field goal gives Texas the lead. Even later field goal gives Alabama the win. So well done by Texas and the Big 12. Now, they're still a Big 12 school, so well done by Texas on Saturday.
I say what you want. Defense has to make stops in key spots. I don't think that call in the end zone cost Texas the game. I think it's easy to see where it had an impact for sure.
Right.
The thing that I saw, and I haven't been able to find video to confirm it, is that there is a chance, and I saw this rumor floating around on Twitter, but I haven't been able to find the video, but it has been said that the ball caromed off of somebody's helmet, which is why Bryce Young was not called for intentional grounding.
Okay.
Again, can't find the video anywhere that shows anything past him not down and throwing the ball away in the end zone, but there is that kind of rumor going around. I think it was grounding. I didn't see it hit anybody in the helmet when I was watching this play. That said, you got to get the stops where they count. You can't leave it up to the zebras at the end of the day.
And, quarterback situation is the situation this week
Exactly.
for UT as Hudson Card went out last week. I haven't heard of his status for
I haven't heard
UTSA.
anybody's status.
Right.
There's all kinds of mixed reports about Quinn Ewers is he out? How long is he out after his injury? Which really kind of sucks because he was playing so well before he got hurt.
Right.
And then Hudson Card gets hurt toward the end of the game, kind of finishes hurt, but we don't know who's going to suit up at quarterback for Texas this week.
If you had a gun to my head, I couldn't tell you the third string quarterback for Texas.
Neither.
I'm sorry.
Same.
I'll do better next time.
Kansas State 40, Missouri 12. Kansas State did what it was supposed to do.
That's a good win. I mean, that's a really good win for our league and a really good win for Kansas State. There's a lot of recruiting ramifications playing Missouri, that Kansas City, that border market, and trying to get recruits. So that's a really good win. And Kansas State may be as good as advertised, what we've seen so far. And a lot of people had them as a sleeper Big 12 championship game pick coming into the season.
I don't understand why this was projected in all of the different projections, whether that's betting or computer, such a tight game, because I think Elijah Drinkwitz is on the hot seat in Columbia, Missouri, and I think that Kansas State was poised to do really well, and I think K-State proved that all those expectations are warranted by beating, even if it is a struggling Power 5 team, a Power 5 team pretty soundly.
That's right. Yep, really impressive in doing it. They didn't mess around at all, so that's a really good win for K-State.
So are they going to build a statue for Joey McGuire in Lubbock, Texas? Final in overtime.
He's never lost as the Texas Tech head coach.
He has a perfect record. 33-30 over number 25 Houston. The Red Raiders get it done in double overtime, and I didn't see that coming.
With Donovan Smith as the quarterback, not Tyler Shuck, who started the season at QB. Was there on the winning drive, was there a 4th and 20 that they converted?
I think so.
Did you see that?
I think so.
A 4th and 20, and they convert that, and then they go in to score the game-winning points in overtime. That's a really big win for Texas Tech.
And for future Big 12 member Houston, it's safe to say the Dana Holgerson era is not going the way that the Cougars envisioned it whenever they made that move.
And they've got to play Kansas this week, right?
Yeah,
Kansas
Houston has a Kansas team that just kind of shocked everybody on Saturday.
Right, jump ahead there with Kansas.
The Cyhawk game, Iowa scored a touchdown. Final score, Iowa State 10, Iowa 7. My goodness, that game was ugly.
I didn't watch a minute of it just because I was busy with other things.
I watched the highlights of it because it was at a very inconvenient time for you and I on Saturday.
Right.
Iowa misses a field goal, which would have sent it to overtime, and Iowa State gets the win. But, man, Iowa State's going to have to make every game, it seems like, as ugly as it did the Cyhawk to get to 8-4.
Yeah, maybe so, but they did it. They got the win. First time broke a 6 or 7 game losing streak to their in-state rival, so that's big, no matter what the score is, to beat Iowa, that's big.
You ready for this fun stat that I did not know until Sunday? That is Matt Campbell's first win over Iowa as the Iowa State head coach.
Yeah, that's right, it is. That's absolutely right, yeah.
Kansas 55, West Virginia 42 in overtime, the rare 2-score win in overtime because of the pick 6 to end it. Is Neil Brown's seat warming up in Morgantown?
They're 0-2. And I don't think anybody thought that would be the case, preseason with Kansas as your second game of the year. But credit Kansas, man. Again, we talked last week about they did what they should have done in week number 1 with that win over Tennessee Tech. And then to go to Morgantown and win like that in that environment, that's a really good win for KU.
That's Kansas' first win at West Virginia.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge feather in Lance Leipold's cap, and I think it shows why they went with such a late hire in the spring of 2021, went to the guy at the University at Buffalo and said, you're the next guy here in Lawrence. And they looked like they were making strides every week last year. They beat Texas last year, and now they're 2-0, facing a future conference member this weekend.
Yeah, and that'll be fun to watch, won't it? Houston may be reeling a little bit, and Kansas has got to feel good about themselves, riding high, so that'll be fun to watch, Kansas and Houston.
Exactly. So, Oklahoma and Kent State, 33-3 as the final for the Sooners. Not a lot to glean from that from OU. They did what they should have done against the MAC team.
But it didn't start out well. Kent State had them, they have the lead, right, 3-0 in the first half for a while. Oklahoma got going, and it ends up, being a pretty dominating win. But, Oklahoma early in the year. Now they get Nebraska this week, coming off a coaching change. Scott Frost is out. So that old Big 8 rivalry, Oklahoma and Nebraska.
The Kent State thing, man. Every Power 5 team that seems to schedule Kent State for a non-conference game always seems to get tested in the first half and have to pull away in the second half. Look at what A&M had to do last year against Kent State.
Yeah.
So good for OU getting the win. I beat Matt Lively in this bet.
Yeah.
Oklahoma State 34, Arizona State 17. My biggest brag on this game, so all my college buddies and I have a group chat, as so many do that are recent college grads. And every week before an Oklahoma State game, we give score predictions right before kickoff.
Oh, nice.
I said 34-17 and then walked inside Lavelle Edwards Stadium.
Really?
I did.
And
when it went final, we were in a timeout in Provo. I went back, found that text, and then just emphasized and started bragging to everybody. So I'm extremely humble about that.
How does Matt look in orange and black?
You know, I think he's putting off wearing the orange, but I have a bright enough orange polo that he might wind up having to wear it on the air Friday.
It is a bright orange.
It is a very bright orange.
I'm watching for that.
OSU looked impressive. They kind of, in week one, OSU kind of went back to the OSU of old, where it's explosive offense and then kind of a defense. But, oh, man, that defense took a step forward in this one.
Absolutely. With all the losses they had defensively from last year's team, which was a great defense.
Right.
That was good to see.
And quick thought here, TCU 59, Tarleton 17. Looks like Chandler Morris is out for a while, but Max Duggan seemed to do well in this one.
Boy, it shows again why you need more than one quarterback, isn't it? I mean, just be ready. How many schools in the Big 12 already have gone to a second quarterback out of necessity already this season?
Right. You've seen it happen at Texas. You've seen it happen at TCU. You've seen it happen at Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And
in the first 2 weeks of the year.
And Jalen Daniels isn't the biggest guy at Kansas, so I would hate to see them have to do it, but there is a chance that we wind up seeing Kansas have to go to a second one, especially with the gauntlet they're coming up against in the next few weeks. And then we've already talked about Baylor and BYU 26, Baylor 20, the final in double overtime. So some realignment stuff coming down the pike today as I was setting up for this show.
Yeah.
So Oklahoma had a home-and-home series scheduled with two SEC foes against Georgia and Tennessee. It has announced that it has postponed both of those home-and-home series, one of which includes a game in 2023. It has replaced the Georgia home-and-home in 2023 and 2027 with SMU, 23 in Norman, I believe, in 27, I believe, in Dallas. Does it look like we could see OU and Texas leave sooner than later?
Don't we just keep watching, reading the tea leaves? Where is this gonna? Where's it gonna break? Where's it gonna fall? Where's the change? Where's the departure date going to land at? And so any little thing like that, could be a hint of what's coming, and could be a hint on the timeline of when Texas and OU leave for the SEC.
And reportedly, I believe it was Brett McMurphy who I saw the report from. Brett McMurphy, you know where he went to school?
I don't remember.
Oklahoma State.
Okay.
I saw a Brett McMurphy report that it was the SEC that told OU, Georgia, and Tennessee to postpone those home and homes and save them for when they become conference matchups. I think it's still a little too late to see a move in 2023, but if there was a conference that would be able to pull it off, it might be the SEC.
Never say never.
Right.
Remember, during the COVID year when we were scheduling games on a Monday and playing them on Saturday. So I think it can be done.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you that maybe it's too late for a complete switch in 2023, but I wouldn't rule it out completely.
If there was one man who would be driven enough to pull it off, I firmly believe it would be Greg Sankey. Yeah. So that scheduling debacle, because now Georgia has to replace the 2023 game. Yeah. Now Tennessee has to replace two games. Does that hurt? How much does that hurt as someone who works inside the athletic department? Because we saw Baylor get hurt by that. The Louisiana Tech series gets completely canceled in, I think it was March, maybe April, and they have to scramble and find an FCS game in a season, first time in a long, long time, except for the 2020 season where COVID had a major impact. They were supposed to have an FCS-free schedule, a paycheck-free schedule, and now you have to pay UAlbany to come down to Waco.
It's not easy. I mean, and we could get Cody Hall over here, our business guy in the athletic department, and if Mac or Coach Aranda come to him and say, hey, we got to do this, Cody would say, all right, we'll do it. And he'll find a way to do it, but it's not easy.
No.
It can't be, because budget-wise, there's that difference. Sometimes travel-wise, and we didn't travel, Albany came here, but travel-wise, setting up all that, those trips are always set over the summer, late spring or summer, and then all of a sudden if you have to, on a dime make a change there, that's tough.
Yeah, and it's to understand, like football programs, for those of you who don't know, these college sports programs have people who are experts at this travel stuff, to the point where I was emceeing a dinner over the summer in June, toward the end of summer ball for the Baylor football program with Coach Aranda, and it was the day that I was given the all clear to book our travel for football season. And I had made some questions about traveling to West Virginia because I'd never done it. There's like 3 different airport options. I don't know what I'm doing with this one. And I just walked straight up to the director of operations for Baylor. I said, I need to ask you a question that has absolutely nothing to do with your team. And he's like, all right, Kurtis, shoot. And I told him, how do I get to West Virginia and what airport are y'all flying into? Because that tells me if it can handle a big enough plane to be able to land during less than perfect weather. And he even said the team's not even flying into to Morgantown Municipal, which has commercial options apparently, which I didn't know.
I didn't know that.
And they're traveling a little bit to get to a runway that can handle a 737.
Clarksburg, right?
Clarksburg, I think.
That's where we normally fly into football and basketball, but I don't know that there's commercial flights into Clarksburg.
I don't think so either.
So Pittsburgh is your best option?
Pittsburgh was my best option, but I say all of that to show there are experts on this who work in these college athletic departments, and Baylor's are as good as anyone because, I mean,
who knows when things might change.
Right, and you're flying into a regional like Waco Regional, and you're flying into these giant airports like Provo Regional and, Clarksburg, West Virginia. And so
that's like, I think it was the first year West Virginia came here to play. They flew into Dallas and stayed in Dallas, and so had to drive from Dallas to Waco on game day. I can't remember what time. It was a night game.
Yeah.
But that's kind of like, I'm sure they ask, but maybe not knowing that's an hour and a half trip at least.
I know Neil Brown has been a fan of that as well, but our station's headquartered in Temple. I live in Belton. The number of times I've been caught behind a caravan of buses because most of the Big 12 stays in Temple when they come to Waco. Had a former professor of mine reach out and be like, hey, how doable is that drive from Temple or Killeen to Waco? Because hotels in Waco that night are pretty expensive because he's bringing some students to cover a game this year. I told him, like, Killeen's doable. It's just you have to go around Fort Hood and Temple Belton. That's where most of the teams stay anyway. He's like, oh, thank God.
It's very doable. And we get that sometimes, like in 2 weeks when we play at Iowa State, we're staying in Ankeny, which is 25, 30 minutes away, but that's not bad.
No, not at all. And, booking as the guy who books travel for our department as well, like, Matt Lively staying in northeast Des Moines, it's 30 minutes from the stadium. It's not bad.
Right. Very good.
Let's go to a Week 3 preview. John, you've already mentioned one of these games, but let's talk a little bit more about it. Number 6, Oklahoma at Nebraska. It's an 11 a.m. Central Time kick on Fox. So Nebraska is looking for a new head man. The Scott Frost experiment did not go as planned.
Yeah, and I hate that. Greg Sharp is a good friend who does play-by-play for Nebraska, and I just hate that they're going through that. But how about Nebraska? And you've heard the story that if they'd waited till October 1st to fire him, the payout would have been like $7 million less.
Right.
But they said
that's how dire it is. I believe the term that they've used for this in recent years is they didn't want to allow Scott Frost to Les Miles himself and win his way out of getting fired because there was was it 2015 when Les Miles was kind of his era was going downhill, and it's like, okay, if they miss a bowl game, we're pulling the trigger. And he made a bowl game, and he went into the 2016 season at that point. OU should be favored in this one, and it is. My question here is, what kind of rebound do we get from Nebraska, and how permanent is it? Is it a Texas Tech last year where what was thought to be a dead cat bounce kind of turns into a run at a bowl game after they fire Matt Wells early in the season? Or is it a just kind of, we're kind of pulling the plug on this season, we'll look at 2023?
I think, the Huskers, the players, I think that's a rallying point.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we're going to play really well, we're going to represent Nebraska well, so I think you're going to get a really good effort from them.
The second game on the docket, I'm inclined to agree with you on that one. 11 a.m. here in Waco on Fox Sports 1. It's the Texas State Bobcats and the 17th ranked Baylor Bears. Texas State just scored 40-plus on FIU. Baylor's not FIU at all. So for Baylor, we've already talked about our keys. I like the Bears to win, but I'm definitely watching how they do it.
Yeah, definitely. And game 3 of the season, conference a week away. You just want to be, you want to be rising. You want to be playing your best going into conference play. So I think this will be a real good test. Nice that it's at home. But Texas State last year it was 29-20 game down in San Marcos.
A 29-20 game, and it was close in that deep into the fourth quarter, and they had a shot there at the end, and then because remember before the last play it was 27-20. They're driving.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you have the strangest ending to a college football game I've ever seen, besides Justin Blackman running 60 yards the wrong way to run out the clock. Towson at West Virginia. This is a FCS paycheck game at noon Central Time on ESPN Plus. West Virginia has to do what it's supposed to do against an FCS foe, or we could be looking at a coaching change in the Big 12 this season, I think.
Yeah, they just got to do it. They just got to do that and then move forward from there because, like I said, they're reeling a little bit.
Yeah.
And they just need to take care of Towson and then move on.
I thought at worst we'd be talking about 1-1 West Virginia at this point in the season.
Yeah, I agree.
Ohio at Iowa State. That's a 1 p.m. Central kick on ESPN Plus. Iowa State needs to, I think, prove that it can win in a non-ugly game.
Yeah, true. And they are deflecting a lot of talk this week. Matt Campbell's name may be top of the list for Nebraska. A lot of people think for the Nebraska job, but he has deflected that so far, and I'm sure he'll handle that, internally with the team. But Iowa State hadn't really lit the world on fire offensively.
No. I actually got a text from a friend of mine who used to cover an SEC team, and he said Matt Campbell at Nebraska seems like a great fit. Does fit even matter anymore? Because we were saying the same thing about Scott Frost.
Yeah, Scott Frost, one of their own
right.
legends, I think it does. I know it does here at Baylor. I think, Dave Aranda is a great fit for Baylor. Scott Drew is a perfect fit for Baylor. So I think it does. I think that translates to big state schools like Nebraska.
Okay. Tulane at Kansas State. I'd like to see some consistency and see them do more of the same.
Yeah. Roll right on, and they'd get to 3-0 and just have a pretty good head of steam heading into conference.
You could be talking about the few 3-0 teams in the conference being Iowa State, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
When it's all, or Kansas even.
And Kansas could be, yeah.
Speaking of Kansas, okay, so K-State Tulane, 2 p.m. Central on ESPN Plus. Big week for ESPN Plus this week. 3 p.m. Central on ESPNU. It's Kansas and Houston at Tedecue in Houston. I'm putting the Cougars here on upset watch because KU is playing remarkably well.
Yeah, they really are. And again, a lot of confidence. A team that hadn't had, honestly, a lot of success here in recent years. But you start out 2-0 and you win your conference opener on the road, they got to be feeling good about themselves.
And I've noticed in the Dana Holgerson era at UH, it's kind of very streaky. It's no one-offs with Houston. It seems to me like it's if they play poorly one week, they play poorly again the next week. So for the Cougars, do the opposite, like make it a one-off at this point. I think Houston wins, but I think Houston wins a close one in this one.
Yeah, I would probably agree with you, although I'm not counting the Jayhawks out.
I'm not either.
That's great. Hope they play really well.
They look really, really good, which I did not see us saying about a Kansas team at this point in the season. Arkansas Pine Bluff at number 8, Oklahoma State. That's a 6 p.m. Central kick on ESPN Plus. That's an FCS paycheck game. Oklahoma State should overmatch the Pine Bluff Lions.
Name your score.
Yeah, name your score. Texas Tech at number 16. I did name the score, and I'm hoping to do that again this weekend. The Texas Tech Red Raiders at number 16, NC State. That's a 6 p.m. Central Time kick on ESPN2. Look, man, if the Red Raiders beat Houston in that way, who's stopping them from going in? What do they have to lose?
Right. It's a great matchup. NC State is really good. A lot of people nationwide really are high on North Carolina State. You got to go to their place. Dave Doran's done a really good job there. So this would be a fun. Is that a night game?
That's a night game. It's a 6 p.m. Central.
Okay.
6 p.m. Central kick.
Okay, so that one will be fun to watch. See if Tech can take that magic on the road, and play and win in Raleigh. But that's a really good matchup. That may be the best matchup. I think I'm through all of them. That may be the best matchup of the weekend involving the Big
It's either
12.
that or Kansas-Houston to me.
Yeah, true. That's right.
And so I agree with you. if Tech's going to win, it needs to do exactly what it needs to copy the Houston game plan and just kind of apply it to a different team. NC State, not Houston. They're not the air raid team that you're going to see defensively, and they're not the kind of little bit more laxed in zone coverage defense that you see when you're on offense. But you have Donovan Smith did what he was supposed to do, did what he needed to do, and had big-time yardage, had Leach-era yardage in the pass game. And so for Texas Tech, you have to kind of replicate that, knowing that no two teams are the same, and you have to weather the storm. That's the key to these big-time road atmospheres. It's part of what cost Baylor the game, and simultaneously part of what kept Baylor in it so late with all those offensive struggles, is weathering the storm on the road. I like NC State close, but I'm sounding the alarms on this one too, and I'm putting NC State on upset alert because I do think Tech is more than good enough to win that.
Yeah, I think they are more than good enough. You're right, and I always think that in a year with a coaching change, that there's always going to be a transition year. You know, there's going to be, it's just different. You got a new head coach, you got a new staff for the most part, and there's just things you've got to get in place. One of them might be notably your style of players, on the team. But Joey McGuire seemed like he's just plowed right through that with a 2-0 start so far.
And it seems on social media like this Texas Tech team is so relaxed. They posted a video last week where the offensive coordinator walks into a room with the punter, watching film of himself, like, how can I punt this ball better? And he looks at him and says, the only people who come to watch you are your mom and your girlfriend. And I thought that was so funny. And they're just so relaxed and just very, I don't want to say self-aware, but they don't take themselves too seriously.
How about that? That's good. It's working for them.
It's working for them beautifully. The final game of the night on the Longhorn Network, if you get it, it is the meet. It's the UTSA Roadrunners and the 21st ranked Texas Longhorns, a 7 p.m. Central Time kick. And we talked about it earlier. Who in the heck is going to play quarterback for the Longhorns?
Yeah, and maybe a challenge. I mean, think about all the energy, and focus Texas had on Alabama last week. Now you can move past that game. How quickly can you turn the page from that in a close loss? This could be tough. UTSA is I think, a really good team. And I think that this could be a game worth watching also.
Is this, to you, a trap game for Texas, given the quarterback situation with injuries?
Yes, I would say yes.
I agree with
because UTSA is good. You're coming off the Alabama game and the quarterback situation.
And UTSA has played in overtime in both of its games so far this season, just like Houston has. It drops a very close one in a free throw shootout with Houston in the Alamo Dome in the new after the third overtime or after the second overtime, the 2-point conversion shootout. Drops that one to Houston at home, goes on the road to West Point, beats Army in overtime. So UTSA proving that it's good in close games. So if it starts getting close at the end there in Austin, things could start getting hairy for Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch. 7 o'clock Saturday night from Austin.
And what a way to end the third week of the Big 12 Conference season.
Wait, we don't have any 9:15 kickoffs this week?
I'm glad you brought that up. What was it? 2.6 million people. The most watched 9:15 Central Time kick in 6 years.
Yeah. That's great.
That's amazing.
That's good for Baylor. That's good for BYU. That's good for the Big 12 to show that many eyeballs on a game like that.
And you look at the fact that obviously that's at its highest point. So not all 2.6 million were staying on until 1:19 a.m. Central Time whenever the game finally ended.
Right.
But to have that many eyeballs on a game that late, could we see a world starting next year where the Big 12 is embracing 11 a.m. and 9:15?
Yeah, could be. I think this was kind of a test balloon for that, to see if the Big 12 could carry that time slot. And, Baylor obviously was willing to play it at that time. BYU, it's right in their wheelhouse. It's an hour earlier Mountain Time. So I think that it is very positive for the Big 12 moving forward.
And late night in Provo was an awesome atmosphere, and you saw on TV how loud it was when they beat Arizona State in that time slot last year at home. We saw in person how rowdy it was then. So BYU definitely embraces it. And if we do see a world where the reports that the Big 12 is trying to get some of those four corner schools into the league with the Pac-12 in such disarray at the moment, for lack of a better way to describe it at the moment, man, that 9:15 slot could become a key, especially for the teams out further west, like the Texas schools, the Oklahoma schools, and if the Four Corner schools come in.
I think you're right. Maybe a sign of things to come.
It could be.
Yeah.
He's John Morris, the voice of the Bears. 11 a.m. kick Saturday. You'll be here.
Bright and early.
I'll be here, bright and early, not as early as you.
Yeah. 9 a.m. on KCN TV for our tailgate.
For the tailgate show, and then we'll have you covered at 6 and 10, myself and Matt Lively, and then at 6 p.m. it is the UMHB field dedication for retired coach Pete Fredenberg during the festivities for their game day in the conference opener against Southwestern. Thanks for joining us on the Big 12 Breakdown. We'll see you right back here, same time, same place, next week.